You like that? You're a dirty little flesh and blood whore.
I'm a savage.
Yeah, you like that, don't you? You like Reinar the...
I love the primeval bellow. Welcome, flesh and blood players, and those who are flesh and blood curious. It's your boy, Rare Hunter here, back from the first Pro Tour with the top 64.
Top 69.
Top 69.
Welcome.
Welcome to my channel. I am the Rare Hunter. That is me. I got my boy E3 Yu-Gi-Oh here to help me out and asking me, what was it? Ask me some questions?
Yeah. I'm interviewing you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We out here. So, what's up? You got to the Pro Tour. You got to get an invite for that, right?
I did.
How'd you get that invite, bro?
I went to Utah for the first Pro Quest of the season, and Pro Quests are basically smaller local tournaments where winning the first place gets you an invite to the Pro Tour. And so I won the first Pro Tour in Utah.
Yo, I heard you also got a nice shiny little gold rare. You want to tell the fans about the gold rare? You are the Rare Hunter. I mean, you got to tell them about the rare card you got for winning.
It's true. The gold rares, usually we don't really like them in Yu-Gi-Oh! But in Flesh and Blood, they're gold versions of these cold foil cards, which are kind of like very rare to begin with.
So kind of like a Shonen Jump prize card from Yu-Gi-Oh! Basically.
It is a prize card, and they go for quite a bit of money. And a lot of players, a lot of collectors like myself, would love to get more of them.
Interesting. So you played this deck. You told me a little bit before we started recording. You played this deck both at the Pro Tour and to get your invite. Tell me a little bit about this deck. It's the Starvo deck. What exactly is Starvo? Tell me about this champion.
So Starvo, he's a guardian, first of all. He's really good because of his ability. At the start of your turn, you can reveal 3 different elements: lightning, ice, and earth. And if you do, then your cards get more power, +2. You get to go again, which is pretty rare in a guardian deck. And also, they're dominated, so that means that you can only block with 1 card from your hand, making him just a very strong, solid pick. One of the first players who talked with this deck said that this was for the fab dads, for the players who want to be competitive, but they don't have as much time to test. And that's kind of what I thought would be great for the first week when the set Everfest dropped. I thought it would be just a strong, solid aggro deck, and I just kept playing the deck, and I really like it. Interesting.
So Starvo, he's like an aggro commander. He gives all your spells like measurable value, like little upsides, like dominate, like you said. That's sick. Let's go ahead and get into this deck list. It's the same list that won you the Pro Quest, and it got you a top. What was your placement at the Pro Tour again?
I got 44th. It was a similar list, but I changed some cards. This is actually more of a control list that I decided to bring to the Pro Tour because we expected a different meta from internal testing.
Sounds good. Let's go ahead and get into your equipment, bro. Let's see what your equipment. Let's see those cold foils, my guy.
Of course. So we have the hero, Starvo, and then this is your basic loadout for pretty much in most matchups. In most matchups, you're not going to be like basically mirror match or anything that's not playing arcane. You're going to be having these 4 equipment as well as the no rune boots if you're playing against one of the rune blades that have arcane damage.
So these equipment, right? This is what happens. These are the cards you start with in play for newer Flesh and Blood players, right? How exactly does that work? They're just out in play, and you can access them on your actions. Give us a little brief overview.
Okay. So equipments in this game, one of the coolest thing about Flesh and Blood is that you start at your strongest. When the game starts, you kind of reveal your hero and then both player pre-side. And this game is a best of 1. You get to take a look, and if you're playing against the mirror match, then hey, these are my equipment. Along with that, you also will be pre-boarding your deck. We have 80 cards in the deck, and for me, I think 11 are equipment, and so 69 other cards are just your deck.
Interesting. So how did you settle on that number 69? Is that like an optimal ratio? Is there some mathematics behind that, or is it more of a personal like fascination with the number 69?
I think actually it's probably just optimal, man. You just got to have all these equipment slots because your main deck is so perfect that screw the sideboard cards.
Exactly. Don't overcomplicate the game. Don't overside. Don't underside. Makes a lot of sense to me. Okay. These are your basic loadout. What are your special loadouts, your sideboard loadouts?
Oh, these 2 as well.
Interesting.
This is your main weapon of choice. The Winter's Will for annoying taxation effect on top of just being an efficient attacker, and then your shield for just better blocking. I actually picked this deck, and I have a specific tech because of the mirror, and that tech is actually Sledge of Amelheim. This card is basically 4 resources and it hits for 6, as opposed to 3 resources hitting for 4. In the mirror match, I like this because you are trading 1 attack, whether it's 1 blue plus your Tunic trigger, for 2 cards. Whereas something like Winter's Wail, you could just block it with 1 card.
Interesting. So this tech for the mirror, you and your testing group, you guys must have expected a lot of the mirror going into this tournament. I mean, this is one of the best decks in Flesh and Blood right now. So was something that was on your radar?
Yeah, so a little bit interesting thing is that right before the tournament, less than 2 weeks before, we had a quick ban list. 2 cards got hit from Starvo. Autumn's Touch, which is a card that you would just play all of for the defense value. It's an Earth card just for consistency. And Awakening, which was just a card that lets you turn the corner and brace those aggressive matchups. So with those 2 cards banned, we still thought Starvo was going to be one of the best decks. Going into the matchups later, you'll know that I think I picked a pretty good choice because I faced more than half of my matchups were Starvo.
That's crazy to have an emergency ban list like that. Is that common in this game? Has that happened before?
I think this is actually one of the first times where we had one of the quick ban lists, and I think there was a lot of issues from the player base because it was like 11 or 12 days before. And
that's
before
wild.
the Pro Tour, right? So a lot of players were having struggles with that because this tournament, it has a lot of international players. I think 25 countries were represented at the Pro Tour.
Yeah, and they got to be prepping for that months out. So
and they got to travel.
Exactly. Dang, that's some drama right there. Spicy drama for the viewers. Rare Hunter and Drama Hunter out here. Okay. You got the sledge for the mirror. You got other equipments in your arsenal?
I do. So as we all know, the enfranchised Flesh and Blood players, Time Skippers for your worst matchup, Prism. This allows you to get another action point to deal with those auras. But it turns out after playing a lot, we couldn't get as consistent win rate against Prism. This may or may not be coming out in future iterations.
Yeah, I think you had mentioned before the video that the win rate was somewhere between -5 and 0%. So I'm a little interested to see if that card makes the cut in the next 3 weeks before this deck is neutered. Continue on.
Definitely. So that was your main loadout. If you're playing against the mirror match, which is what I recommend, you're playing these 4. And if you're playing against Rune Blades, you're going to be playing these 6 as well as the Arcane Barrier. And then if you're playing against Prism, you'll be replacing your feet with the Time Skippers. And then we also have these Null Room Gloves. So the strategy actually is that we play a more defensive list. Against Chain, we're going to be trying to fatigue them, trying to deck them out. And then against Prism, we're also employing a very similar strategy. So we do want the Arcane Barrier in case we need to nullify that type of damage.
Yeah, arcane damage is a really scary way to close out games because it's difficult to block, so it's important to have those types of equipment for sure.
And then lastly, I just have 1 Arcane Lantern. My team and we were mulling over this kind of last minute, but I decided I wanted to respect the Wizard players, and it turns out that there were 2 Wizards in the top 8.
Definitely worth the respect. Wizard, scary archetype. Okay, and that rounds out the equipment. Get that shit out of here, throw it in the trash, hundreds of dollars of cold foils. But you're the Rare Hunter is fucking pocket change. Let's see the main deck. Let's see the main deck inclusion. What's up with the main deck?
All right. We're going to start here with just the elements because as we know, Starvo, his main mechanic is fusing, so we got to get all the elements. But I actually don't play that many. I play 2 pulses and also a third that you'll see later. The last pulse is the Lightning Ice one, but it's red. And you know, Guardians, we don't like that. We don't like those red cards. So screw those. These 2 are just for fusing.
Yeah, we don't like them red cards around here.
We like the blues.
Yeah, the blues. Yeah, the blues are the ones we like.
6 Earths. We would play more Autumn's Touch if we could, because those block for 3, and this is a defensive deck. Most of the time, you're just using this to block or pay for your defense reactions or your shield or crown.
Interesting that you say it's a defensive deck, but you also said it's an aggro deck. Is it just the defense is just really strong to parry other aggro decks, or is it just really good on both sides?
I would say prior to the Awakening ban, it was pretty good on both sides. And right now, the popular list is what they call the casino list. They call it Casino as it's like a high roll type of deck. However, I felt like if you miss, then the deck feels pretty awful. And so I would rather play a more defensive list and kind of capitalize on their losses than to just kind of high roll the game. And I felt like I was way more in control in the mirror, the Starvo mirror, as well as playing against the Rune Blades.
Yeah, it's also better, I think, in your case, if you think you're a stronger player than your opponent, you give them more chances to mess up when you're playing a longer game. So very powerful strategy. Okay, what are these cards here? That one looks pretty. The Channel Lake Frigid.
Oh yeah, how did you know? This is an altar. Take a look.
Show that one to the camera.
Where's
the
the
Rare
camera?
Hunter. I think you're a little
off.
little down a little
Little
bit.
down.
There we go.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh yeah, that's a nice looking one. Those look clean. Oh shit.
These are awesome.
Let me
There's a
see one of
little
these.
fox on them.
Tell the people about the fox.
The best thing about these are that they're ice, so they work with your hammer. If you hit with your hammer, you give them a frostbite. It's really annoying for the aggro decks, like the Runeblade decks. But the best thing about these is that they block for 3. So you're just going to be chucking these and trying to block. One important thing is that if you can, against Chain, you don't block with this because it's a non-attack action, and then you can kind of make them not deal damage with Invert Existence. Invert Existence is an instant that they'll play against you that will banish an attack action or a non-attack action, and if they do banish those 2 types, then they'll deal 2 arcane damage to you, which gets kind of out of hand and hard to block.
A little bit of strategy against the Chain on how to use these sexy looking alternate arts. Okay.
Yeah. And then there's also these 3. Actually, I have to shout out my testing partner and one of the players that helped me build this deck, Spencer. I listened to him, and originally we had 3 blizzards, but he drew 2 in a hand, and he was like, I never want to draw these 2 crappy cards in my hand ever again. So we cut one for an icy encounter, just as another ice for consistency, another ice for Channel Lake Frigid, another ice for Winter's Wail. So those are my choices.
Smart. Having the opening hand configuration is always a bonus. And that rounds out the elements, doesn't it?
It does. I think I have one last thing to say. We decided to play these blues for lightning, and originally we had flash. We cut flash for these surges because the surges are good at 3-card hands to kill 2 Uras against Prism, but also they're not non-attack actions, so you can't. It's easier to play around Chain. We're really afraid of Chain here. We're trying to fatigue them, and they got to go through all 40 life.
I mean, rightfully so. You said, I think it won the Pro Tour Chain.
It did.
That's a nasty deck. Similar to Lightsworn if you're a Yu-Gi-Oh player. Similar to Dredge if you're a Magic the Gathering player. Very dangerous deck. You get access to a lot of cards past the first turn of the game. You got to be prepared for it. Got to have a plan for those arcane damages, that kind of stuff. All right, let's get into the rest of the deck.
All right, the rest of these cards are kind of just 3 blocks, 3-block Guardian cards that you're going to be blocking with most of the time. And if you get a chance to, you get to attack with 3 Organolds. They are supposed to be a specialization because the picture is of Oldhim, the different hero, but they're not for some reason. If it hits, it puts 2 cards from your opponent's hand to the bottom. It means that you can be aggressive and also defensive.
And it's going to hit more often than not because you know what? You got Dominate, right?
I do. However, I don't play as many elements, so the chances of me fusing are very unlikely. But the whole strategy with Flesh and Blood is that you pitch cards. So you use these cards also as mana or resources. You pay your costs, and then at the end of the turn, these cards go to the bottom of the deck. So basically, you're stacking your deck. The whole point of this deck is that you block and then you stack the bottom of your deck so that later on, when your 2nd, 3rd, or even 4th cycle, depending on what kind of game you're playing, you'll be having these stacked Oakenolds back to back. And that's actually how I lost one of my mirror matches, was my opponent was playing a very similar strategy as me. Not as many defensive reactions, but more elements. So he was able to more consistently stack against me. And he kind of stacked 5 of these back to back against me, and I couldn't hang.
That's fucking nuts, yeah. And he was probably able to give him Dominate because he's able to fuse, like you said.
Exactly.
Interesting. All right, and this card, ooh, banger.
3 Spinal Crush. This is just another Guardian card that blocks for 3, but they're also kind of nice on the offense. This is good against Chain because it stops him from getting Go again, and this is another Hymn to Tarak card where if you hit with these, if it deals 4 more damage, Crippling Crush, then it discards 2 cards from your opponent's hand. If you have the tempo as this deck, you are able to just throw out these huge hitters and slow down your opponent.
Yeah, those cards are devastating, both 9 and 11 in offensive power with effects if they connect.
Yeah, 9 and 11.
Very crushing, no pun intended. Can't forget about those cards.
Cannot forget about those. Speaking of which, we cannot forget about our lovely sponsors, Darkside Games LV. if you guys are coming to Las Vegas for the Uprising premiere, please come check us out. These sponsors helped us get to New York City.
And you get your decks, right? No?
Yeah.
Question mark? Yes. Okay, cool. Yeah, shout out the sponsor.
Huge shout out to Darkside Games.
All right, cool. Next up in the deck.
Just three block blue cards.
Interesting.
Blue so that you can pay for your costs, and they block for 3 and they're Guardian cards. These ones aren't really relevant. When I went first, I did swing these just for 8 damage. It's kind of good because if they don't want to block, then you're getting cards out of their hand, even though they draw to a fresh 4 at the start of the turn, even if you're going second.
What about the Nacho Libre?
The Nacho Libre, this one's sweet because it has Dominate, so late game you can close out the game if your opponent's being stubborn and they don't want to scoop to you.
Is that also like an alternate art? It looks kind of clean.
This is an Armory promo similar to that of an F&M promo.
Interesting.
Full art.
Yeah, extends into the border there. Very sick looking card.
Very sick.
Block for 3, tap for 3, and yeah, solid stuff.
Yep. And then 3 more Tear Asunder. This also blocks for 3, but against Chain, it's another one of those non-attack actions that you kind of want to pitch instead of blocking if you can. You don't have to go out of your way to do it, but if you can, it really screws up the Chain opponent. I think the 2 Chain opponents I had, they were very flustered that I had no non-attack actions toward the end of the game, and they just couldn't deal free damage against me. But other than that, this is a great card for Prism because it gives your hammer or whatever Guardian attack Dominate. And then this also adds on an extra effect of discarding 2 cards if it hits.
Him to Turok. Never bad.
And finally, the last 2 blue cards, well, not blue cards, but the last 2 Guardian cards would be 2 Pummels to pummel your homies, but also for Prism because you need to attack their face and deal damage to break their Spectra shields, and this just kind of helps you get it over. This is also just happened to be kind of the last 2 slots if you want to dedicate to something else. We decided to dedicate this to Prism.
Yeah, pummel your boys. Are you really homies if you don't pummel each other a little bit?
It could be 2 icy encounters if you want that instead. It was also just kind of nice because I liked it because it was an attack reaction, so that again for Chain, but I was just super paranoid. And lastly, the kind of the most unique part of the deck.
Ooh, the hidden tech. We saved it for last.
A couple of hidden techs besides the sledge. We play 3 staunch red, 3 staunch yellow, and 2 staunch blue, along with 2 turn timbers. Normally, I think the decks, Starvo mainly just played 3 of these, and called it a day. If for the mirror, we noticed that in the mirror match, you kind of just your defense reactions can trade really well with their big attacks. So Crippling Crush feels like it's really garbage, even if it's fused, if you have one of the defense reactions. So in the end, it felt like the Guardian matchup was more about damage more than anything else. We kind of just took it to the next level. Spencer was always like laughing at me because I didn't want to play more staunches, but now we just have a crap ton of defense, along with 3 of the 0 cost defense reactions, or 6 of these actually. So we have 3, 6, 9, 12, 16 defense reactions plus a pulse, so 17. This is a really good way to match your defense reactions to their big attacks, and then you're going to swing back with your sledge, and they're going to be scrambling to block because the issue now after Autumn Touch's ban is a lot of the Starvo elements are 2 armor, so they block really poorly, and they're going to leak damage.
So this was a way to swing tempo back in your favor in the mirror. Make sure you didn't get outraced.
Yep.
Never put into a position where you're, never put into a situation. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, that makes sense. It's a little bit more defensive post-banless build of the deck, but it looks fire. It looks solid. A lot of staunch responses. The Turnt Timber. I like the Turnt Timber. And these nice looking foily cards in the back. You know what? Show those off a little
Ooh,
bit.
How did you know?
Give some Rare Hunter love to the...
These are some alpha pink strip foils. They're fire. They're fire.
Oof.
Some other first editions.
Smash like for the alpha pink slip. You know what I'm saying?
For sure.
That's what I'm saying, dog.
But lastly, really just, this also plays into our other plan where we're just going to fatigue Chain. You're going to be banishing cards off the top of your deck as Chain, and you kind of get cards that you can play from Banish, the Blood Debt cards. What we're trying to do is we're trying to just play a bunch of defense reactions, and we can block efficiently so that they're just going to mill themselves.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's a lot like in Yu-Gi-Oh! Using Threatening Roar against Lightsworn, or in Magic the Gathering using Hedron Crab with against Dredge, more or less, with the fetch lands. So yeah, I could see that. You know,
yeah?
just
Oh, yeah.
buy yourself some time while they're milling. And that's
All right.
proven strategy in a lot of different games. So
Yeah.
worked out nicely for you guys at the Pro Tour. Hella sick. All right, and to round things out, we got a few more cards, right?
Yeah, so this is like going to be your main 60-ish cards. The two difference is these two.
Blizzy. Is it the
Blizzy, how did you know?
I know
How
it was
did
the
you know?
Blizzy.
It was the
dude.
Blizzy. The
It's
Blizzy, they just don't block. The more we play with this card, the more we're like, this card is kind of ass. But, you know, sometimes either it wins you the game on the spot or it's really bad. But these two are interchangeable. I play the Blizzards against the more aggro go wide lists. So I did play against Katsu, for example. A lot of small attacks, and this would be kind of good against them, actually. And then these Turn Timbers are just 2 extra red, 2 cost DRs. If you fuse them, they go up to 8 block instead of 6, so they're really good. But if you don't, because we don't play that many elements, they're just okay. Against Chain, I like the Blizzards. Against something like the Mirror, I like the Turn Timbers. And then the rest of this is 58. So these two are interchangeable, and these are pretty much the main cards I played the entire weekend. I don't think I needed these cards because it didn't matter.
You got any foils in that pile? Let's show off some foils.
All
if
right.
there's any.
Yeah. And the last 7 cards are just more elements.
Any foils? Oh, what's the Pulse of Volthaven? That's a foil, right?
This is another gold foil. You gotta have the gold
You
foils.
gotta have the gold foils.
Against Prism and against Kano, these are kind of your aggressive package. You go up to 9-ish of each element plus the pulses, and then, you know, the two Blizzards here normally. But you need an aggressive plan to fuse more against Prism to deal with the Spectre Shields. And the Blinks are naturally good against anyway because you need them to gain action points to destroy multiple Uras. And we're trying to fatigue them anyway. So I don't think we need all of that extra elements for our strategy, but they could be good. They could be good.
Facts. Well, you know what? That rounds out the deck. Thankfully, you dodged Prism,
Yeah, Prism.
the telecasting company. Good thing you dodged them with their hidden fees. Also, you know what? Congrats on your Pro Tour top. This deck's going to be around for like another 3.5 weeks. A lot of people could learn a lot from this list, I think.
I still think that this is actually a really good list to be using for your upcoming ProQuest season. Starvo is probably going to get Living Legend by June 24th when Uprising comes out. But still, if your local meta for ProQuest season is filled with the Mirror Match and Rune Blades, this deck is really good at fatiguing them, blocking them out.
Do a quick little shout out to the matchups, you know? Wrap it up. What'd you play against?
I played against 8 Starvos.
Jesus.
Out of 14 rounds.
Well, good thing you were prepared for the mirror then. Good thing you had the sledge boy.
I actually went 6-2 in the mirror,
Nice.
which is really good. I think I was really happy with my deck choice.
I know you had mentioned one of the mirrors you got stacked up with 5 of that one card.
Yeah, that was one of my losses. The other loss was round 1, where my opponent pretty much just fused for probably like 80-90% of the first 12 turns or so.
Sucked the shit out of you. It's a round 1 curse, dude.
It is a round 1 curse. I have not won a round 1 still, but
ever in any tournament.
in these big tournaments for sure. But I won 6 in a row after that. Played against some really good players. Day 2, I played against Chain, and then I lost. I started losing when I started playing against the Kano players. My first loss, Day 2, was to Alex 4, who actually was the first seed going into the top 8.
Dang. Played against the number 1 player, and
Yeah.
I got rocked. But you know what? Sometimes it happens. It happens to the best of us. Make it rain. You'll get him next time. And don't forget to subscribe, everybody.
Smash that like button.
Smash that like button. Peace out, everyone.